Alright, today we're going to be talking a little bit more in depth with Edit Poly. Not going to be able to cover everything, but we're going to get through at least a good enough things that will get you started on modeling a little bit more intensively. So right here we have an example. We got a box that we've thrown Edit Poly on, and we've got our modes here, selection modes, right? We've got Vertex, Edge, Borders, Polygons, and Elements, right? So if you hover your mouse over it when you forget, if you can't figure out the icon, hover your mouse and it'll tell you what mode you're in, just like my sample mouse is right here. So our next one, modeling tools. So for each one of these modes, you're going to have a bunch of rollouts, but the most important ones for each mode here is going to be like edit vertices. Here's all what you can do for edit vertices. This rollout is for everything that you can do for edit edges, edit borders, edit polygons, and edit elements. Now you're only going to see one of these rollouts at a time when you have that mode selected. So we're going to start with edit vertices, right? So I've got a cube here, box that we're going to start off with, edit poly, right? So we'll go into vertex mode, or points mode as I often will say. And our first one is remove. So I'm in points mode, so you can see everything here. And looking, there's no points on the example below this. These points should not be here. They're just random points. So we can actually just control click and select both of those. And if we go to our menu, right, and I always recommend to minimize these so you can see, right, edit vertices right here. All I did, if that was confusing for some people, you just drag this window out so you can have your menus here. So if you click remove, you will remove those points. Now that was because of they were just randomly positioned on this edge. If you took a corner point that has edges only connected to it and we hit remove, you're going to see we just removed this whole piece of geometry, and now you can see it glitching, right? So you definitely don't want to do that. That's not going to work. So just removing blank points will definitely work. So we have here extrude, pretty simple. We are going to extrude something out or create a spike or something. You could simply extrude, and here we go. You get the options box. Here's the height, and here's the distance, right? So we can spike that out, and we got like a corner spike. So next we have chamfer. So if you look here, we've got this solid edge on the side here. Select a point, and we can click chamfer. And the amount will allow us how much do we want to chamfer this down. And so we can create a chamfer. Now there's a box here for this open hole, so if you wanted to have a hole here, all you have to do is check that box, and you can get a hole there if need be, if for some reason you needed to have that inset. So that is chamfer. So next we have break. So we're going to create something like this. We're going to break the points apart. So currently these points are broken, or not broken, right? They're all connected. You move it around and it will change the geometry shape. Whereas if we go to break, when we broke that one point, now you can see what it's really made of, right? All these different pieces here all these 4 points were actually all together because they were sharing edges, but now we've separated them out, right? And this could work for specific situations where you need to separate out some areas. Then we have target weld. So target weld is nice if you need to weld some points together or get rid of some geometries. We could go into target weld, and we could just simply say I want to target weld you two together, and target these two together. When you're done, you can either right click, and you'll notice that the blue button goes away, right? So next we have connect. So this is great when you have areas that you need to create a triangle or a square, or you need to really reshape some things. So what we can simply do is select 2 points and just click connect. There we go. We've connected these two together. can select these two here and hit connect. Oops, wrong button. There we go. Right, so this works for anything. If I really wanted to create some weird shapes here, right, I could just keep connecting all over the place. Although there's unnecessary geometry that I would not want to have all these triangles just because. But just to show you what all of these tools do. Alright, so that's edit vertices. Let's move on to edit edges. So edit edges, you got to be in edge selection mode. So here we get our edit edges rollout. You'll notice it automatically updated from edit vertices to edit edges. So here we can simply select my object here. You can simply select edges and I can click remove. Now, being that they were kind of on the top, it removed them and still kept the shape. But you do have to be a little careful here, because if I start going in and removing, it could really mess up the geometry and not get the shapes that you want. But for, say, if I wanted to redefine some of these edges and I didn't like the direction that they're going, I can just simply remove those out. And the same is true for rings. So here I have a loop around. So if I do a loop, I can hit remove, but the problem with this is your points are still going to be there, right? So normally when it comes to loops, I would not do remove here. There's a different remove we'll talk about later, which will actually remove those without leaving any. But just for simple edges here and there that you want to get rid of, or you want to reshape, you can just click remove. Next is extrude. So I went ahead and selected my other object. All we need to do now is select a couple edges here. I'm just control clicking these edges, and then I can simply hit the options box for extrude, and we can create some quick spikes, right? We got how much do you want to extrude these out? There we go. So we've just extruded that edge right out of the geometry. Now we'd still have some areas that we're going to need to fix up, but for now, just to show what it does, there we go. So we're switching over to our next object. We have chamfer. But just to see what it looks like for single edge here, we can chamfer it right out, and it turns it from 1 into 2, and that's this one right here. We could do several if we wanted. Now this causes a lot of geo issues here. But what we could do is double click, get a whole row of these edges here, and we can chamfer them all at once. And I've essentially just split this line from 1 to 2 if I really need be, or even 3 to separate that out. So oftentimes I might use this for these edges here. If we needed to make these smooth, I can go ahead and chamfer that out, and it'll simply drop that down so that we get a smooth edge. We'll move on to target weld. So currently we have a hole in this object. So what we can do is we can actually target weld these edges, and you don't need anything selected. You just turn target weld on, click this edge, go over to select the other edge, and it chamfers them together. Sorry, target weld. So there we go. We've got our target weld in place. Next up is bridge. So right here we've got some edges across here that we've deleted a hole here, and if we just capped it we'd be missing our edges. So real quickly what we can do is just go to bridge, and we can select 2 edges and it bridges them. Right, so if I add to my selection, you see I could bridge more, but it's going to start causing some problems. But if we add in the ones that are directly across from it, it's good to go. You could also deselect and turn on bridge and select one edge, and you'll see the dotted line. Click the one adjacent across from it and it will bridge those together. So that's bridging for edges. So next up we have connect. Maybe we need to add in some more loops here, right? We could take this, do a ring, and we can click connect, and we can have an option of how many we want to connect. Now it's only going to connect what you have selected, right? Whereas if we did a full ring, alright, let's do this one. Let's see, where's a good one at? Here we go. We have this full ring that goes around the helmet. We can connect and throw in a line all the way across it. So it connected those edges all the way across, created some more geometry, of which I could do other things like scaling it out to create a different shape, right? And that's edit edges. Our next section is borders. So let's go ahead and take a look here. So our first one is extrude. So I'm going to create a couple borders here. So what a border is, an area that you have a hole. So we have one here, so we could select that border. Here's borders. We hit extrude, and you can go ahead and extrude that up. And you can even extrude the actual edges out, although that gives us some triangles there and would give us more work with this geometry of what we would need to fix, but that is an additional feature there. So, but we can just extrude that out. We'll go ahead and select this border. This border has more than one edge and points here. So we can go ahead and let's extrude that as well. And you'll see that we don't really have an option for how it extrudes. It's going to extrude almost the direction of the edge. So this edge is right there, so it goes out that direction. These edges go right out, and these goes out, right? So you don't really have a choice in that matter. Now what you can do is you could scale them down on the z-axis if you wanted, and you can change that shape, right? So that's extruding the border. So let's move on to chamfer. So if we select this border here and we do chamfer, what it does is it takes the border and it's going to chamfer where the border was out and create an edge going around that, right? So there's a few other options here. You got the amount of edge segments here. We also have, if you want to put an open hole in it, you could. Could be good for doing an extrusion here. We could do that, the chamfer, and then extrude in. Or we could leave it still together, but that will open the hole up. The other thing, we got a few other options here. We can smooth the entire object or the chamfers only. That'll just do the smoothing, and then to change the smoothing amount. So that is the basics there for the chamfer borders. Now we're going to do bridge. Select our new object here. So in order for bridge to work, we need to have two borders to actually bridge. So I'm going to go ahead and attach this other object real quick, and we will put a hole in it so we have a border here. Control click this border, and then we can go to bridge, and we get our bridge. Now we can change a few settings here. Like first we need to have some edges, so we can do some edges, and then we can do tapering if we wanted to taper that, so we could get some really neat shapes here. Maybe this is like a stick shift handle coming out of the car, right? Or it could be the emblem on the front of a car, right? So we could also do the bias as well if we wanted to kind of change the way that it tapers. We have the smoothing, which affects the lighting there. We have twisting, which tries to twist and bridge it. Probably would only use that in certain circumstances. And then here is use specific borders, so if you wanted to change, you could select a different border, and it would do that as well. Now if we have, let's change up the sides, because before we had a 4-sided border to a 4-sided border. Now we've gone from 4 to having 6 connected to a 4. So when we do bridge, right, you are going to get some triangles here because they're not the same amount of sides. I recommend you try to get the same amount of sides when you're bridging, just so it's smoother. So a 4-sided polygon to a 4-sided polygon will get a nice smooth bridge and really look nice and even. All right, our next one is cap. So the way cap works is if we select a hole in the object here and we just hit cap, it puts a new polygon together. It just caps it right off. We're going to go ahead and select this area and do cap, and you'll see it did cap, but you're not going to get that connection there. You'd have to reconnect those with edges. Now also, if you have something like this, a really weird deletion there, if we cap that, it will cap it, but you're going to get some major glitching because it's trying to twist this polygon to fit, and you can see it when we turn around. You can see the dark blue edge here, right? So you can still go back into the edges or points and connect this, do connect, and that'll fix that back up, and we do the same for there. So insert vertex. So for this particular one, this is really useful when you want to connect this point here and you want to have a ring that goes all the way around, but I deleted this polygon and there's no edge here. What we can do is select the border, and we can do insert vertex, and you just click where you want the vertices to be. Right, so now we have the two vertices, right? You'll see if I move this, there it is on that edge. So I could select these two and connect them, and select these two and connect them. Then I have my continued ring of, or loop of edges going all the way around. Right, there's the loop going all the way around. There we have it. And shift clicking, I can select all the points around. So that is for edit borders. Now for edit polygons, we're first going to cover the extruding. So what I'm going to do is select this, shift click the one next to it, it'll select the whole ring, and then I will go ahead and extrude that out. And you get several options here. If you just extrude out, it's going to go all the way around. So by default, it just kind of extrudes it out in this odd direction, whereas if we change this, instead of by group to local normal, it'll locally extrude out evenly across, or by polygon which is not what we want in this case, but works sometimes maybe for like creating a gear. So we're going to do local normal. So I've got like this bottle cap on my bottle now. So we're going to go ahead and do a bevel as well. So let's say this top part here, I'm going to do bevel. Now bevel, the first part says height. Now this is really the extruding part, right? Because we just extruded this polygon up. The outline, which you're going to see this word again, the outline is how it's beveled, the actual beveled edge, right? So I could kind of bevel that cap there, right? And you can also do it again by local normal, group, or polygon if I was doing more than one polygon. So we'll just check that. That is bevel. So now for bridge. I kind of talked about bridge before because we could do that for handles, but we could also create a hole by selecting two polygons and bridging them together. So there we have a nice bridge. Right. So outline. So for outline, I'm going to go ahead and let's just select all these polygons on top here. Right, now outline, if I click the outline options box, you only get one setting, and that's the amount right here, right? And so what it's doing is the bottom of the polygons, it's changing the amount of the outline, which is essentially bevel. So we could just select these here and do outline, and it's going to change the bevel. And you can even just do it just with one polygon. If we just select this one polygon here and do outline, it basically kind of bevels it in, right? So there's one. We can bevel it. Now you don't want to inset anything like that to the point where it's like crashing into itself backwards, right? That's not going to work. So don't do that. But we can bevel this down if we were trying to create a more unique bottle shape. And I can even go as far as to go ahead and control click the other one on the other side, and we could make this even. There you go. Right? And then we have Inset. So Inset is what I originally created for this area right here. But an inset essentially insets it, takes this polygon and moves it inward, creating these outer four edges now. Now you have by group, polygon, and then we have the amount. So the amount of the inset. So maybe I just want to create a bottom for this bottle eventually. There we go. I'm going to hold shift and drag this out, do a copy. There we go. Now hinge from edge. Now this is pretty neat, hinge from edge. What we can do is we pull that options box. When you first see it, it's not going to do anything. It's got an angle, 30%. It's got one segment, and then the last one says pick hinge edge. So you're going to pick an edge that you want to hinge it from. So we pick this edge. Oh, look at that. We got this like flip out. And I could even grab another polygon and see it's literally still hinged on this edge. I could re-choose an edge, and it's going to hinge from this edge right there. Maybe I want to change the angle here if I wanted to create a unique shape. There we go. I've hinged from edge right off of that. There we go. So that is edit polygons. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about edit geometry real quick. There's a few of them here that we talk about. Now we've talked about collapse, and that's when in any of these modes you'll see edit geometry. So you could select a polygon and collapse it, right? Attach would be to attach another object. So I could just click and these become one object now. This essentially now is bottles, where this is bottle 009, bottle 10, and bottle 11. So these three bottles are now one object. The elements mode is what allows you to select them separately because they are essentially sub-objects, or technically called elements. We've got different elements here that we could click and then move. And then in object mode, you're just able to move them. So we'll go back down to element mode. There we go. Now we have attach, and you also have detach. So you can select something and hit detach and ask you, detach as what? We'll call this bottle detached, just so I can show you. Now I have to turn this off, deselect. There's my bottle, bottle detached. So these still are together. Now before we talked about bridge for doing a hole, but I could essentially bridge these two polygons together. Let me move this one out of the way real quick so that you could see, you could have two sub-objects, and then when I bridge them, which would be back under polygon mode, bridge them, bridges them together. So now, I don't know, this could be some sort of castle, two castle towers, right? So I could select all these points here. Could go back to edit geometry and collapse. Now, the other one that we haven't quite talked about down here is we have some different tools. We're just going to talk about a couple of them. If you wanted to, say, hide one side, right, I'd have to first select this side. And then I could hide selected, and it will literally hide those selected polygons. So it's still there, but it will hide it so I could look around it better to be able to see. And all you have to do is hit unhide all to bring it back. So that will hide certain pieces. So I could even select this here, hide selected. Or I could do hide unselected. There's that piece. Now, there are also some other tools here. If I wanted to make this whole bottle flat on one side, I would need to grab all these polygons here, and I could do make planar, and it will flatten it straight down. So the other bottles are curving, where now I've flattened this whole edge right there. So that works really nice. So if I didn't like this shape and I wanted to flatten these, I could just do make planar. And what it does is the average, because you'll notice this doesn't go straight up and down. If we look back, it averaged between each angle that the polygons were and did an average. If you want them completely flat, you would need to do either X, Y, or Z. So X, now it's completely flat up and down. So if you'd like to check out more tutorials on modeling, go to the Autodesk website. Or I'm sorry, the YouTube channel, Autodesk. You can get to it from their website too, but Autodesk 3ds Max Learning channel. And they have Modeling Objects Part 1 and Part 2, which will go into other things that we have not quite covered, and actually using them to model certain things, sort of like this gas can.